Hello and welcome back to Split Decision. It is an episode that I am most definitely looking forward to. Mitch, we are going to go through the EMEA rosters for partnership.
Yes, we are. We're going to see, I guess, not all of them fully completed, but the vast majority, we know what we're going to be looking at. And I'll make some comments. And yeah, that's what I mean. We're going to slide in early and lock in what we think they're going to look like, I guess, when it comes to playing on the server and competing against each other. Excited for this one.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that we definitely wanted to get a look in, but was sort of waiting because there were a lot of rumored rosters, and the main one I was waiting for is Koi. Now, Koi themselves haven't obviously come out and been like, hey, this is our roster. But from what we can see, those sort of like VCT lists that have come through are directly from Riot. So we're going to assume they're correct. And we've even added in sort of the extra member that could be signing and just to have a little chat about it. But either way, first team, just going to do it in alphabetical order. There is no bias here until maybe we get to the team that removed Enzo. And we're going to be kicking things off with BBL, Mitch.
Well, taking a look at this roster, I gotta say it's a little bit different than what I was expecting off the rip. Obviously, we've got Vlad in there. He's going to be running the back end of it. And
that's the coach for anybody wondering. He's not on your screen.
Yeah. So Vlad's our coach, and we expected to see like some of the players maybe follow him from Giants and so on. But right here, what we're looking at: Turco, Aslan, Cutie, Brave, Elite. I think everybody's familiar with those 5 players if they've watched within the Turkish scene. It makes a lot of sense, but I'm missing a player like Russ in there, Tom. I'm missing him big time.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because Elite, I assume he's 17, but he's going to be allowed to play maybe because there's that complicated little like age rule. It's like if you signed after a certain point, then it's fine. And maybe he's going to be old enough by the time the league actually starts. I guess I could actually just go and check that quickly because I think that's going to be one of the things is it seems like they're going for some younger talent, which I definitely don't have any problems with. April, so yeah, I think he'll be okay. Maybe not for the February one, but I assume it because he's going to be fine for the league, they're going to allow him to play. I think Brave is a fantastic pickup. Like he was someone we saw before in Supermassive Blaze, 19 years of age, controller player, someone who we always thought of as a star, but because Supermassive Blaze fell off, I haven't seen him. So I'm just going to assume that he's still to that same level. And with players like Aslan and QT and Turco himself, I think this is a solid roster. I will say I'm starting off a little tempered because I know that we have some big rosters coming up. I don't see this team competing at the very top. I think they'll have to have improved drastically if they're going to beat a Liquid, a Fnatic, a NAVI, anyone of that caliber.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's some big names there that could catch you, like your Cutie. As you said, we're familiar with the likes of your Turco, your Brave. Haven't played together before. Elite, not 100% sure on, but for the most part, this roster, it looks like one that I'm used to seeing, but I'm not used to seeing making those super deep tournament runs. So I definitely agree with you. I think this probably comes in with the same standards and expectations as an SMB would. They can maybe upset a team or two here or there, but not when we're looking to take the trophy more than likely.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, we're sort of leading into what we're going to see in Brazil, and I think that maybe because they've got a core that's stuck together and it isn't a complete sort of rebuild, they might have some opportunities. And we all know that the Turkish squads, in terms of individual brilliance, can catch teams off guard. But yeah, I think like getting anywhere near that trophy, that would be a pretty big surprise. Now, number 2, we're at the complete opposite end of the scale because although they have changed their roster, I would say fairly drastically, Mitch, this is a team we do expect to now fight for a trophy.
Yeah, look, this has got to be one of the scariest teams that I've seen, hands down. I mean, every single one of these players individually could be a yay moving on up. I think Boaster, as maybe the one exception, he could be a finesse. Right, like that's the thing. You've got these.
You know?
Hey, no, listen, we've heard it before. Like Ye can do well, but Ye and finesse together, that's the whole thing. So you get 4 Yays and a finesse on a team. You're looking pretty good. I maybe that's what they're doing here. I think I saved it. I think we're okay. So don't hurt me, please. But no, man. Honestly, like some of the best players here. I think Leo. He's been a player that we've sung as possibly being the best player in the world for a long time, despite not seeing him compete at that top level international stage, never qualifying all the way through, and being able to break through to that grand final and become the massive guy. But we know that he can be, and seeing him on this roster, I think he will be.
Yeah, I think as well, having a coach like Mini is definitely going to help out with that, like sort of pushing him to maybe do more individually, and we know that he's so flexible. The thing that I'm actually quite surprised with this roster, though, is that they ended up with both Chronicle and Leo. Like, I feel like if I was going to sort of make like a top 5 players, one of them, which in theory was free, which it just, again, I feel like the checkbook could have been out by other organizations, because I am going to go down the list soon. And again, you can even look at some of the teams, even BBL, for example. I know that there would be a complete language swap and that would be ridiculous, but someone like Chronicle is such a huge pickup because he is someone who is flexible, but also has a peak of winning a championship. Which, again, like, you're looking at some of the players on this list. Durka is phenomenal, but he's never won an event. Boaster, the same. Leo, the same. Alpha, the same. Like, you've brought in someone, literally one of 10 players who has managed to win a championship from EMEA. So the fact that he was on the market, and I didn't see that much talk about him. Like, we had links of players all over the shop, and again, the same with Leo. It was pretty much from the get-go. Leo's going to Fnatic, and I was like, no one else. Like, Liquid's not going in for him. You're not seeing, like, even a NAVI or anyone else putting the pen to paper. No, it just seemed like Fnatic went, I want him, and everyone else went, yeah, all right, and they've just made a super team, and I'm like, what? How have you got away with that so easily? But yeah, this team is monstrous in every single position. I'm curious to see how it will work, maybe with a couple of roles. Like, I think that more recently Chronicle was on a duelist. I can only assume he's going to go back to more of an initiator role alongside Leo. Unless they're going to try and flex Alpha, but I don't really want that.
Let's be realistic. If I look at this roster, I would not be upset, especially knowing that Mini is behind it, Boaster's on the server. Take any of those 4 players, Alpha, Leo, Durka, and Chronicle, who could be the duelist? Any one of them. On any roster, any one of them could be. And here it's probably going to come down to what mixes and matches best on each map, which is just a wonderful thing for a team, for an analyst, for a coach, for an IGL to have the ability to go into any map and be like, how do we want to play this? You know, it doesn't even matter what agents do we want, where do we want them. We can do anything. Any player can play any agent essentially, and that can be to the highest of levels. A really scary thing. And with time as well, Tom, you're guaranteeing me this Fnatic roster stays together for X amount of time. Oh my, this is going to be terrifying. This could be the best roster I've ever seen.
Yeah, it genuinely is possible. I think that I'll be interested to see how they get off the ground, because I'm the thing with Fnatic rosters, they do have honeymoon periods, and that honeymoon period will be at the event, because from what we've seen, okay, they're off to Japan to play some like fun tournament, but I don't think they're actually competing in any of the off season. So if their honeymoon is in Brazil, it's ropes. Like, I don't want to be the first team to play up against them. I imagine it's just gonna get crazy. Now, before we go too crazy about Fnatic in general, we better move on. And we're going on to football list now. This is already, we've seen it as a 6-man roster. They've added Ata Kaptan, who again is someone that I can't claim to know massive amounts about. I'm sure there's some people within the Turkish scene who are probably losing their mind, being like, he's come from Thunderbolts, he's going to be a huge pickup. The thing with this roster that's kind of odd, though, is that, okay, they've made no changes, but I kind of understand why. Like, the only tournament that they competed in was the VRLs. They won, losing 2-0 and came back 3-2, which is showing huge resilience. They've got some talented Turkish players, and from what we know from both Turkish organizations, they are sticking to Turkish teams, which, hey, there is a lot of up-and-coming talent from those regions. The problem, Mitch, is I don't feel like there's a lot of complete talent from those regions. So, like, I'm looking at this squad and going, okay, if I was going to change a player, who would I bring in? And I'm a bit stumped.
And that's probably the logic of taking in a 6th man here. I mean, it can serve a lot of different purposes, whether it's a safety net for a player you might fear will fall off, or maybe you've seen some warning signs already. It could be simply that you want to have extra flexibility. You know, you don't want to overload your guys, and on certain maps, you can flex in that extra player to make it easier on pivotal roles. Who knows? Who knows what they're going for in this one, but I think that it does definitely stem from the problem of football is not having that pool to fall back to and go, hey, this is the guy we're going to pull in to fix everything. And again, there's some players out there like the likes of Russ, who's currently, you know, on that Giants roster technically, but he's searching for options. It doesn't look like he's going to be playing or fielded on that roster at all. So it is then, you know, a little bit weird, but at the same time, footballists, they're winning. Get an extra player in there as a safety net and just keep up the winning formula, see how far you can take it. That's how I view this roster, at least.
I guess it also depends what Russ wants to be doing, because in my mind, there's still that superstar Jet out there who basically single-handedly took a map off
Yep.
Liquid and dropped like 90 kills in a series and lost. So if he wants to do that, like, are you going to replace Kiwi right now? Probably not, just because you haven't seen Russ playing recently, and Kiwi is a phenomenal duelist. So
it's a winning formula.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a logical change just yet. The thing is, though, they're on a different trajectory because they are playing some of the off-season. We know that they're going to be at the Rebel event coming up, and I think that will be a big tester for them, because let's say some of the teams going body them, then they might start going, okay, well, we're one of the teams that has been playing and practicing for, what, like a year now? If we get smashed instantly by a new team, you go, panic buy.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to that as well for teams that are rolling into franchise. You can go and say, hey, let's go have some fun. Let's go enjoy yourselves. But there's almost like a baseline expectation from you of even you on a chill day having to compete with these teams that ultimately want that spot that you have, and they just haven't been offered it in these events. It will be out to take it out of your hands.
Like
or
if they lost the focus, make a roster change.
Yeah. No, literally. Yeah. At that point, you just be like, hey guys, would you like our players' contracts? How would you like to be Turkish? Let's go. I think that's like, it's something every team is going to face as well. When you go to those events, everybody wants to beat you a lot more than you want to beat them, and they're so goddamn hungry. They're some of the most stressful events when you just go to play for fun as like a top 8 team, because you just get a target on your back, obviously.
But yeah, and also you know that every single Turkish player in the world wants to replace you. So it's like, that's the thing. It's not like last year where you could have like 4, 5, 6 Turkish teams all gunning for the same spot. There are 2 spots, maybe a third if you manage to win the Ascension. So there are literally only 10, technically 12 spaces for those players, although no one wants to be the 6th man either. It's not the spot to be.
It's true.
Now, the next team is one I think it might be the most fun to talk about, in all honesty, this Giants roster. Because this was one where I feel like Giants have gone out, and I will say I do have 1 or 2 issues with the team, but I think like the pickups they've made, fantastic individually. Like I couldn't pick, if I was going to pick up individual players or even a starting block, if you start with any of these players, I'm happy. It's just I am a little worried about how things coming together.
I'll say this, when I was looking through all these rosters when the announcements are coming out, and even now looking back over them, I just get a wave of nostalgia looking at this page, because when I hit the Giants page, it feels like I'm back on HLTV, man. It really feels like I'm looking at a CSGO, some sort of CSGO tournament back in the days. I mean, this is just such an old school Valorant roster as well. And funny to talk about CS when we've got James coming out with the statements he did. Man, like Rhyme, he's got the same warm-up routine. He's ready to go into the matches. I can't wait to see it on the I'm so sorry, Rhyme. I'm so sorry, but someone link the clip below. It's just beautiful. Like I think this is a roster that could shake it up, honestly. We've been looking for that roster that Nukia could be a part of, that he could be the I mean, honestly, I don't think he's made nearly as much waves as Leo has over the last year, and that's weird to me, because he should be number 1. Maybe he could have been a Yay, just not necessarily in the same style. Now, you look at this roster, and I start to think this is where Nukia maybe looks most comfortable. Maybe feels like he's back in his CS days, and
let me ask
maybe
you a
dominates.
question though.
Go for it.
Who's playing Duelist?
Everyone. That could be a problem.
Because like Vitinho, at least in my mind, Jet Rays. Okay, Nuke can play Sova, etc. But if I'm talking about superstar players, I kind of want him on Rays. Cloud, he's a very good Sova as well, but also pretty good on Rays. And Ryan more recently has played a lot of different things, but again, he's a pretty good Rays. So it's I'm sort of sat here like I the other thing as well is Rhyme's IGLing experience is towards the lower end when you look towards the EMEA right now. So I think with a coach like Pipson, there's definite chances as long as he keeps his mic muted this time. But the fact is, it's sort of like one of those things where I'm just a bit worried about everything coming together, because firstly, Rhyme is going to have to be one of those IGLs that is almost like a statement IGL, because we know that players like Nuke like to get vocal. You know that you've got a lot of sort of personalities within this roster. I know I've also heard that Vitinho is maybe on the quieter end, and that might not necessarily be a good thing if he is maybe still going to be in that superstar role. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one works. At the same time, I feel like the risks that have been taken by Giants are actually ones that I'm on board with, because it's like either this works and you potentially have a team that could actually challenge, like with all the supers. Like Cloud is world class, Nuke is world class. Like either of those players could win you matches. So if you get everything working, this team is brilliant. If it doesn't work, I think they could be 1 or 2 changes away, and that's a much better spot than if you go low, you don't get any of the superstars, your team doesn't work, and then you go, right, we're gonna sign. Fuck, everyone's in Giants.
I do think, honestly, as well, from the perspective of Giants IGL of Rhyme, I think he's going to do a great job of reining in some of those personalities and being almost that leadership figure for the team. I think he's a good man to lead this bunch. As I say, at this roster, it looks right in a way that's wrong. And there's something I like about that.
What does that even mean? That's
doesn't look like a Valorant roster to me, man.
Statement ever.
It's such a, I genuinely think I'm on a different website when I look at this, and I love it. I want to see more of these guys on the server tearing it up. But at the same time, it could turn into just chaos of, I'll play raise this map. No, I will. I'm insta-locking. I don't think it will. I think this is going to be, I hope it's something we can be proud of.
It might be a fight for Sova, in all honesty, with both Nuke and Cloud there. Honestly, though, I think that Cloud, for me, was probably one of the players that should be getting picked up first. Like an incredibly young individual who can play multiple roles, and tough ones as well. Great entry fragger, but also fantastic on like initiators as well. So hugely valuable. I think Nuke, as you sort of mentioned, like even though he hasn't had the success, can easily peak at like top 5 in the world. So I think this solid roster. I also think Hoodie's underrated and someone who is going to be a crucial part of piecing everything together. So I think Giants have done a good job. If it might work initially. I want to see the long term though. Like I think that this team might be able to like bully people going into Brazil. It's whether or not if I'm sat here in a year and these same 5 players are in the team, and I don't know if that will be the case.
Yeah, you know, one of the other things I'll say, looking at the Giants roster, looking at I think Cloud in particular, he's been through that cycle of honk. He's been in there. Any player that's been in the honk roster strikes fear into my heart.
Fair.
So that alone gives him what he needs to reach a success.
I'm excited for your opinion on this team, because this next one, it's they've sort of rebuilt G2. Like it's a bit of a weird.
Haven't they just?
It's a roster that genuinely I find it. Like, so they started obviously with Kellogg's and Mixwell, which already, the comedic irony of that is hilarious. Like, I want to know if someone just is writing, like, the beginning of a stand-up comedy movie, because it's like, hey, you know those players that were consistently swapping with each other? Yeah, we're going to sign them both first, and then we're going to build the team around them. I think Boo, excellent pickup. Severely underrated IGL. I think when you look at the synergy of that old London United roster or the OG London United roster, it was fantastic. I think that, again, the peak of some of these players is superb. That's where it sort of ends, though, because the peak of most of these players was at the end of last year, if not before.
Yeah. But again, I cannot tell you how many rosters I've seen players who were at a peak and then they end up falling down because the roster itself falls to shreds. Maybe it's the leadership, maybe it's just not keeping up with metas, whatever it can be. I don't think that's necessarily a barrier for any of these players. And looking at the man, it is just perplexing. Mixwell and Kellogg's, the team literally fell apart on the basis
also
of
Zeke as
me
well.
or you.
It's so funny as well because they brought him in the wrong role. At least this time they actually do have an IGL, so they're not going to be like, right, Zeke, you're here, you're not playing your role anymore, and you're IGL. And he's like, what? But
so here's my problem, right? My problem right away is there's a reality where Nilzino has a HR meeting every week because everybody's at each other's throats thinking, you know, this is the dickhead who tried to kick me out of the team. Fuck this guy. He left his cup in the dishwasher last night.
Surely that HR meeting would also be with him because he was there last time as well.
I want you to pull this up though, right? You can do this in post production, Tom, but I've linked it to you so you can see it as well. Doesn't look like there's any issues in the camp. I mean, they're chilling out here. Mixwell and Kellogg's in the pool,
he's just
floating
sent me
around.
a picture of the team in the pool. I'm not putting that in the video. It's not worth the effort.
I love it, man. You've got Avova floating in the background as well. It's just beautiful. And, you know, I see Neil Zeno tweet out this picture. I see Heretics all chilling in the pool party, and I'm thinking, okay, they're all feeling good. The boys are back together. Look, from an objective standpoint, I think every single player there I've been individually excited about before. I've been, you know, thrilled to see that I was casting them on a day, or that we were going to get to see them on the stream, because they're just so fun to watch and some of the best at their craft. Putting them together in the way they've made it here, man, you could make a movie out of it. If this team ends up winning in Brazil, Mixwell will have a movie about it. When he retires, it's his first role. He's going to be playing himself.
It'll be changed
and it'll
to
be like
the Godfather of Valorant.
Literally, yeah. It's like he kicks Kellogg's out. He's like, I never want to see you again. Get out of here. Back down to the VRLs with you. Kellogg's is losing all the games. He's crying himself to sleep. He's like, we're 9-1, or 1-9 even. And then it just sweeps back in. They all end up on Heretics. They're back together in various iterations of the roster.
I'm just kind of imagining like some High School Musical. Like
it would be.
It
would be. It's like Kellogg's crying, the door kicks open, and Mixwell's there. Like, yeah, it would be beautiful. And I'll tell you what, he can sing. He can sing as well. I know that about Mixwell. I'll guarantee it here and now. So we might be onto something here. I think we copyright this and move on.
Okay. Well, to talk about maybe a couple of the individual players, I do think that, like, again, Avova, someone fantastic in his role. Zeke's peak was off the charts. I do question again, though, is like, does this mean that Mixwell's going to go back to Sentinel? Because we have sort of seen, like, Chamber somewhat be, like, moved a little bit out of the meta. Like, it's still being played a lot, but I think that it's eventually going to be to a point where you can now see Cypher getting buffed, and you can now see Killjoy being run on a lot of maps. And I don't think he was ever particularly good at those agents. So that's where I do see that some of the flaws could lie once again, where it's like, okay, I have to see Kellogg's on a duelist. I have to see Zeke in sort of that flex role. And if that doesn't work, I think it could get a little bit rough, but I'm excited to see what this roster can do, because ultimately it seems like a blast from the past.
Yeah, and I think Avova is one of the best backbone players you can have as well. You know, this guy on a controller, which I assume he'll be playing in this roster. Maybe Boot can compete with him for that, but I like, there's so much potential here. There's a couple ways it could go wrong, but this is definitely still a scary team. First 2 weeks are going to be very telling for what to expect from these guys.
All right, well, moving. I already, like, I've looked at this picture earlier. Still feels weird. It feels weird. I like him going to Scream and Avera, KarmineCorp jersey. It's like, Scream has been in the Liquid jersey long enough now that when I think of Scream, he's in Liquid, which, considering the CS career he had, is actually impressive. Because I feel like I should be, like, imagining him maybe in a old G2 or one of the, like a Titan or something like that. But no, it's Liquid now, so a bit of an odd one. I'm not sure about this roster. I'll be honest. Like, obviously, you've gone sort of the French Benelux route for KarmineCorp. It makes a lot of sense. They are that representative within the region. The problem is I'm looking at the success that Liquid had, and I don't know if this team will be better. And Liquid already had their own problems. Yeah,
and again, talking about an upcoming Liquid roster, when we do get there, we can have a bit of a comparison. But looking at these guys, like Nuzera and Shin competing at this level is a concern. I want to see them hold their own.
Yeah.
Not coming in expecting them to, or hoping that they do poorly, but not expecting them to do great and hold their own pound for pound. XMS, he can compete on this level. Solid controller, can definitely be a good backbone player for Navera and Scream. We know they're going to show up. They're going to put numbers. So really, like, expectedly, the eyes are going to be on Shin and Nuzera, who they've proven themselves moving through the lower levels in the previous KarmineCorp. We just need to see what they can do.
Will XMS be a controller, though? That's the thing that I sort of question, because in his recent, like, more recently, he was, some of his most recent games are on Reyna. So it's sort of like you've got Scream, who, in my eyes, he can only play duelist. Like, I don't think it makes sense for him to put on anything else. XMS's recent peak in performance has been on a duelist. Navira, in reality, is always going to be that Sentinel player, and then it seems like it's up to the, I say new boys, they were on the old team as well, but it's up to them to almost fill in all of the gaps. And your IGL is still Scream, which I don't see that working, unfortunately. Like, I think they'll have some incredible matches. I think the peak of this team, again, just like with Liquid, will probably be quite high, where they can upset and beat a lot of teams. Do I see them winning an event? Do I see them even qualifying once we get into the later stages? Probably not.
No, it's a big task, and I guess to further clarify, like the concern with seeing Scream IGL is not that he can't do it. It's more like putting that extra weight on his shoulders, right? And then you think about if you were to replace a player on a roster that has Scream that can take that responsibility off his shoulders, does that typically benefit a player enough that it justifies? And in this case, probably, I think most of the time when it comes to Scream, maybe it's something that he wants to pursue, something that he particularly wants to do, and he could be the exception to the rule. That could be fantastic. But yeah, I see what you mean, absolutely. And when it comes to filling in the roles, I guess there's a reality where someone like Shin is going to be playing your controller on a lot of maps. Maybe it can be a secondary, maybe XMS will take secondary, but the reality is, I think as the new guys in here, I have two minds about it, or the old guys, but you know what I mean? The newer to this level of play. Do you keep with what you're comfortable on and thereby, achieve your highest level right away? And the other guys maybe have to come down a bit into a role they don't normally play or fill in something, but they can do that at a decently high level. Hell, remember Navarro with a Killjoy running down mid with an op? He can do whatever the hell he wants. So, you just start picking up whatever agents maybe they'll fill. Maybe Navarro will fill. And we've seen Scream do it before as well, going back to his Breach debut. So, this is a roster that's also shown us before the ability to be flexible. Not anymore. That was a long time ago when he debuted in this game. But back then, we were like, he better play the Reyna. It's Scream. Just let him play the Reyna.
Yeah.
It was a weird time. But yeah, look, it's one that could compete. Again, my eyes are going to be on Shin and Nuzera. I want to see them against some of these other franchise teams who can really just will not be pulling punches.
Well, we now get to Koi. Now, this is obviously the one that's sort of, it's not technically announced, and it's the 5 players to the left-hand side, which are officially on the roster. Starzo was rumored, so I don't want to touch too much on that. I think that the actual core of this team, though, is very exciting. And any team with KarmineCorp, already a solid start. Shados, we've already... I think he's still underrated, which seems weird because of how good we know he is, but we're on a team with Nats, or you're on a team with Chronicle. A lot of the time, you're not going to be talked about as much, and his impact is absurd. Trex, again, I think is still underrated, like some of the performances he had with Guild, and then we have some of the newer players. Now, I don't know too much about Famzy. Again, it seemed like... I do wonder if he's going to be that 6th player, and if Starzo does join, maybe that will be the full roster?
That's, at the end of the day, with Starzo sat there as the 6th man, he's got to replace someone when he comes in, and I don't think it's going to be KarmineCorp, put it that way. I think...
He tried. He tried before.
Let me change that statement, actually, in hindsight. I hope it's not KarmineCorp. Because that would really ruin my next statement, which is that, well, with this roster, then, I guess KarmineCorp is going to be making 3 international events with 3 different teams. Finally, that will be true, because obviously the first, Masters that he qualified for wasn't technically international.
Yeah.
So kind of ruin the stats. But now it'll hold up. It'll kind of be true. 3 international events, 2 Masters champs. It works. This guy builds just Goliath rosters. We know that. We know he can lead better than almost anyone in this game. Held the track record may suggest better than any. I think that I could see just 4 names with random letters just assigned. You could generate 4 names, generate 4 AI faces, and I would say this team will compete for the top because KarmineCorp says that, and I ain't gonna overrule him with the track record this man has.
Yeah, I think the one, obviously people might be looking at Wolfen and thinking like, okay, I don't know as much about this guy. He was a guy who was playing for Kase, and we saw him a little bit during VLR, or VRL, that's what I was looking for. And he was fantastic. Like, individually, someone who could go for those sort of aggressive peaks. A lot of the time didn't do it with a lot of support, which I think shows that when he's in a team like this, where you're going to have players like KarmineCorp, like Trex, Shados to sort of set you up, I think you're going to have a lot more opportunities. I also think this team, if you do add in Starzo, is one of the most LAN experienced teams we have in the entire scene. Like, you're talking about Starzo, who literally won champions, Coldamenta, who obviously did well in previous events, but also had a decent run with Guild as well. Shados, again, a winner of a Masters event, a finalist of champions. Trex, the same in that boat as well recently. So I think you've got a lot of young talent mixed in with a lot of experience, and I think that's a deadly combination. And then you've also got Barber in the backlines, who, again, one of the most experienced people coming from CS and as a coach. So this is genuinely one of the rosters I'm most excited about. And I actually think they might have played this transfer period the best, because I feel like a lot of teams, okay, you had Fnatic, who I also think are up there, went in and got exactly who they wanted, didn't need to change a massive amount of the roster, but just picked up a few great pieces and put them in. They needed to build from scratch, Mitch, and if I'm building from scratch, Trex, Shados, and if you get Starzo as well, I think you've killed it.
Yeah, I think, again, looking at that core of mech, you're just picking them apart here, like vultures when it came to the assembling these teams, and rightfully so. Every single one of those players was like the best of the best in what they did. Having Shados in here, having Trex as well, I mean, that already puts potentially 2 of the top 5 players, depending on what you're assessing within EMEA.
Yeah.
Coldamenta definitely in the top 3 IGLs we've got in EMEA. That's already a star-studded lineup. Add Starzo into it, and there's absolutely no doubt these guys could be pushing for the top. I mean, if you look at how this is shaping up with the teams we've already covered just this far, maybe throw in the next one, a Liquid as well, and then I'll say it, but including Liquid, we now, I would confidently say, have a more competitive EMEA environment through these first couple of teams than we ever did in any of the challengers and so on, where you would consistently have 2 teams dominating, or 1 team dominate, and then the others would kind of scrape their way through, and it would be a close enough level. But here, I don't know who's on top. I don't know who's the number 1 and number 2 right away.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm looking at maybe Giants, Koi, Liquid, Navi, Fnatic as 5 teams where I feel like all of them could easily trade maps and like have close series between them. Like, again, there's a few. I even think that a Vitality might be a bit of a darker horse in there, just because like, when we get to them, they've gone a slightly different route. They didn't just go for like those, like they've done basically the opposite of Giants, where I feel like they've built a better support system, and Giants have got the better stars. But either way, Koi, I think they did a great job. I think if they add Starzo, that would be a great final piece. But Famzy is what, an 18-year-old kid? I think if you're molded by Coldamenta, who knows, you could be a superstar in your own right.
For sure.
This is a pretty big one. Now, obviously, in the pictures, you can see they're still underwater, because that was a pretty cool video. I want to give a shout. The team at Liquid, just, I know I follow their editor on Twitter, who like creates all of that stuff, and he posts like how he does it underneath. Absolute god tier content coming out of them, but they've also got a god tier roster. Like, I feel like if you're gonna get rid of Scream and Nivera, most of the time you're gonna come out worse for wear. I don't think they have.
Yeah, it is definitely hard to argue that it's an upgrade getting rid of those guys, but, well, it's hard to argue that it isn't looking at the ones that they bring in. And, you know, seeing Safe here as well, that is rolling back the clock as well, because he has been here since day 1. The guy breathes this game. I remember one day we had, I won't say who, but we had somebody who was supposed to come in to film a video piece, and they weren't available for whatever schedules and so on. It happens. So last minute, we were going to have to, you know, either scrap it, change it massively, because we needed 6 people for a really, really cool, well-edited piece of content that didn't go wrong at all. They definitely didn't take out the context of a Brazilian piece and then cause all of Brazil. I got out scot-free. I don't know how. You know, same thing happened at First Strike. You know, the Solkis on your screen there. I made a joke about how he wasn't playing well. By the way, the joke was supposed to say that he would be dropped from the roster. Somehow Sue got shit for it, ended up being called out all over
you
Twitch.
Want to know the funniest thing of that? He's the only one left.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. And here he is. Here he is, still on this goddamn roster. Outliving Scream, outliving Nivera. And it just goes to show that...
The curse of Mitch lives on.
Hey, it was a joke. It was a joke. I didn't mean it. But then you looked at Reddit, you looked at Twitter, you looked at all these, they're like, oh my God, he's so shit. Oh, he's dropping his roster instantly. Fuck all you guys. All right. Yeah, that's what I love about Solkis, man. He doesn't talk shit on Twitter. He doesn't go DMing everyone. Screw you. I'm gonna show you. He just proved it. He just literally proved it. He made a turnaround to be one of the best guys I'd ever seen. Just bang, just like that. Mastered the agent and has continued to make a statement and a case for himself in this roster. So, but what I'm saying, Safe, he jumped on this podcast with like, you know, a minute's notice practically. He was ready to go. He lives this game. If he's not, I think the condition was to wait for him to finish a ranked game, if I remember correctly, because it's like if he's not ready to go, he's already in a game. That's how he's living. So I love it. A hard worker, one of the hardest workers in the room for sure. Redgar Nats, if you don't know them, you didn't watch Valorant last year, and that's just how it is. Same thing going for Yumpy.
The year before.
Yeah, ever. Maybe you don't know what this game is, and that's unlucky, bro. But you got a lot to learn. You got a lot to catch up on. These 5 you're going to see a lot of when you're watching back those old VODs, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think, again, this is a roster that we're talking about now. They've almost got to win a tournament. I feel like that's what it comes down to. When you build this good a team, when you get both Nats and Redgar, again, there's only 2 IGLs from our scene that have won our set, or no, 3 that have done themselves sort of in a master scenario. You've obviously got Angel, you've got Bone Cold, and you've got Redgar. You managed to get one of those, and you've got him on your team. So I think he's going to be a fantastic piece to this puzzle. Safe, I think the one LAN event he attended, he topped the stats, even over Ye. So again, someone that's just going to be such a huge piece to the puzzle. And then you've kept Yumpy, who many were expecting him to almost go back to CS because he was that CS prodigy, and has proven that he can use the operator on literally any agent. So I think this is a team that, again, ultimately they've got to win a tournament at this point, because this roster is utterly stacked.
Yeah. At this point, Liquid are hungry for a trophy, I think, as an organization.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a move that tells me you really want to get involved. And actually, I think, you know, as far as roles go, again, you could blur the lines on a couple of these. Having Nats and Safe on the same roster alone just opens the door on so many possibilities.
I think it's interesting, because in the past, I'd agree, but Safe has been such a sort of duelist more recently that I feel like it's actually more going to be, my look is going to be towards Nats and Yumpy, because I feel like Yumpy is someone who's sort of like, he does everything. Like he can be the best chamber in the server. He can be the best breach in the server. He can even be the best Astra or Omen in the server. Like, we've seen him play pretty much every single role. And that's what we always gave credit to Nats for, because he was by far, like, you go back a year or two, he was by far the best Sentinel. It wasn't even close. Like, you can name anyone from any region. I don't care who it was. No one was better than him on Sentinel. Yeah. Then people were like, oh, we're going to read his Sentinel. So he switched to Viper. He was the best Viper. There isn't, again, not even within contention. Like, you can name anyone you like. They weren't better than Nats. And so everybody started copying Nats. So he went, fine, I guess Astra. And then just started being, maybe I won't say the best, but definitely one of the best. And he's done it on so many different roles and agents. And then you look at someone like Yumpy, where you go, my man is playing Omen on Icebox. What the fuck is he doing? And then he TPs into your face, shoots you in the head with the judge, and then he's gone. And you're like, okay, fair enough. And then the next map, not even like, or next day, I guess, playing Icebox again, he's like, okay, I'm now playing Chamber on this map. And you're like, oh, well, where's the fucking Omen gone? It's like, I drove 30 kills, never mind, doesn't matter anymore. And that was just him. And the thing is, he was probably one of the only players, other than maybe Soulcast, where I look back at that Liquid roster and go, this guy actually wanted to win rather than do well himself. Like, he would literally do fucking anything for this team. And you'd see him like top fragging on Breach with an operator, and you're just like, that's fucking stupid. Killjoy as well. Like, he's literally done everything. So they're the two I think I'm going to be most excited by, because although I think Redgar, sublime IGL, Safe is going to be that superstar duelist, we know what we're getting with Soulcast on the Initiator. The other two, you could come in one day and switch their roles every map, and I would be fine with it, because they can both do it to the highest of tier 1 standards. And that is the most utterly fucking terrifying thing, because there are teams that can do that to a degree. I don't think there's anyone that can do it better than these two players.
Yeah, I 100% agreed with you. And we're already, and you see what I mean now as we finish out the Liquid roster. I don't think we've ever had
to NAVI.
That's what I mean. We're not through the list yet, but I still can't think of an EMEA event where it was this stacked, and we're about to add to it. We're about to stack a little bit more on top. Beautiful.
Yeah, fuck it. Like, let's take the team to win a Masters last year And let's add in CNET.
Let's add the best player in the world from the year before. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a good idea. What a good idea. How could this go wrong? This is like I'd like, look at it. That's a champions winning team right there. I'd say in more ways than one. What can you do? If you load up against these guys in the server, you lose. Angel's one of the best IGLs. He's built again and again. You've just taken Artis out, who's nuts, and put CNET in, who is nuts. It's still a nuts team. Nobody's surprised. I mean, maybe get a little bit less attitude, I suppose. Who's going to stand up to Angel now?
Yeah, that's maybe someone needs to. I don't know. I do think if you put Angel and Xiao also in one of those sort of pre-match interviews, it's gonna be dangerous because Xiao is a personality and a half. But no, I think that this, if anything, it could be more terrifying. I still think that Artis is a huge loss to the roster, but I can't think of many people better within EMEA than CNED to try and replace him. I'm sure both Turkish teams probably slammed a fucking hole in their desk the second that roster announcement. It's like, they've taken fucking CNED. What do you mean they've taken CNED? Like, how is that? But if you're CNED, it's like you've got the opportunity to not only, firstly, the NAVI women's team is also Turkish, so they've already started making moves into that region. It's something that NAVI are clearly happy to do. NAVI have one of the best support systems of any, and I don't even mean within the team or even the coaches, which they do have, by the way. They've now brought in Latex as well, who I think is going to be sublime, helping out Doom Bros. But as an organization, they are superb in like just sorting everything for the players and giving them the best facilities they can have. So I think that's going to be like all the different like mental coaches and all these different things that are definitely going to add to this roster. But you've also then gone there and you brought in what will be probably the best IGL he's ever been under, or at least the most experienced. I think, again, you can give credit to players like Bone Cold, Cold Mentor in the past, but I think you have to give credit where it's due to Angel, and also the support system, because that was the main thing last year. It's like, okay, CNED didn't perform or this year, to the standard that we expected of him, but it did seem like that Ascend team was a bit of a shit show. Like, if I'm being brutally honest, like, seeing some of the comms videos and stuff that came out, I'm like, oh my god, I would have walked out the room. Like, it's just screaming. And the thing is, CNED is that quieter guy. Now, if anybody's going to be able to fit those players in to a roster, make them feel comfortable, support them in the best way possible, well, it's going to be players like Angel. It's going to be players like Xiao, who Xiao's probably the best initiator we have. So it really is going to be entertaining to see, okay, has CNED actually fallen off? Or is it like Ardis, where he's now going to go into this roster and it's like, oh my dear lord, he's better than he was before?
It's just another example as well of Angel taking from the pool. Maybe it's not just Angel, right? Maybe we should point some other fingers around as well.
Eric's pretty good at his job.
yeah. But just dipping into that pool of the old like Fabrican players, I just wanted to check because Latex I've seen around for a long time. I wanted to go and have a look, and sure enough, he played in the first game I ever casted this game, the Valhalla Invitational, and they played up against, funnily enough, the best team at the time, Royals, who were just dominating. Neff was playing on that roster. Neff just disappeared, just retired, just said, hey, I'm not playing FPS anymore. It was one of the biggest losses I think I've ever had. But that first game, Latex was dominating, right? 21 to 21. It was looking good. Right away made an impression on me. And, it was Meadow as well, who was on that roster way back when, ended up getting picked up. And my boy Hype was on that Royals one on the other side. Just a fantastic pickup. And again, showing how Angel's always kept an eye out for those players who've been around from the start, kept his ear to the ground.
I will say,
he picks up those guys off the street and he makes them good.
I feel like that one might have been Eric, if I'm being brutally honest, because I'm also pretty sure he was involved in that team.
Wanted to get picked him up off the street. No, that's what I mean. Angel is the thing for that team. He's just been, and it's always been the same with him. He looks at opponents, he goes, that guy. That kind of pissed me off when I was playing. And how did he do that? You know what? I'm just going to get him. Figure it out.
He's mine now. Navi,
come over here. Tell me how you beat me.
Buy him.
I love it, man.
Right. Last team we're going to go into is going to be Vitality. Now, this is a roster I think that didn't do it the same way a lot of others did, where it was like, oh, we're going to fight over Nats. We're going to spend $1 billion and just like break our bank accounts to do it. I think they've been smart with their roster moves, and I have to say, I am happy with every single member they picked up. Like I think that they've done solid work to pinpoint players who are going to be solid within different roles. I also think they picked up a few players that didn't necessarily get the plaudits they deserve, Mitch.
Yes, yes. You know, I actually, when I look at this, I think of like the value shelf in the supermarket, but they've restocked it with the like high value shit. Everything's half price, but it shouldn't be. These guys have all achieved massively. They've all been exciting players, ones that we could have run away with. I mean, the likes of Sander and Twiston as well. These
Yeah.
they could easily dominate up against any of the other teams in here if they're having a good day. The same goes for the rest of the team. Bone Cold's already shown that he can lead a team at the top level, rather. So at this point, then I look at them and think, okay, I think this team's done it right in the sense that, as you said, they haven't gone chasing after Nats. They haven't gone blowing all their budget on some crazy buyouts or anything like that. They've looked at it. They've assessed, who's going to get us the best roster here, and getting Destry and Malsey and Twiston as a core. These guys are incredible. Again, players that if you don't have your ear to the ground of Valorant, if you're only watching your international events, if you're from like North America, you won't know them more than likely. Bone Cold, sure. Sender, maybe. But you will have heard whispers. But when you watch the EMEA, when you watch the VRLs, anything that level, these are the guys that are being talked about. These are the guys that can definitely push through to that top level for those that haven't already.
Yeah. Well, I think firstly, like, making sure that you hold on to a Bone Cold is always going to be a priceless thing. Like, again, there aren't many champions winning IGLs. In fact, you can limit it to just two, and he is one of them. So again, and you can see almost the implosion of that roster once he left. And Vitality, okay, I think them losing that VRL finals was atrocious. I still couldn't believe that happened. But I think the players they brought in is ones that have some very strong supportive elements. I'm sure that these are things that they did during trials, but also ones that are worth setting up. So I think like Twiston, one of the most explosive youngsters you're going to see within the scene. Like a man uses Shorty more than he uses most other guns, and he uses it well. I think he's going to be a superb entry fragger, but then you've also got players like Malsey, who I still think is criminally underrated. Like, he is someone I think that you could have put him on any of these top teams, and I would have gone, yep. Yeah, that's fine. Like, I don't see anyone else who I would have been happy to replace him with. And I think he just gets overlooked because ultimately that Oglu roster never really achieved probably what they should have done. I think maybe they should have got a little bit more out of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think especially for someone like Malsey, you look at the agent pool value that he brings, it's massive. This is a guy that we've heard a lot from, played with players like Hype in the past. I think someone that has a lot of hype, again, around that tier 2 level, but he can fill in pretty much any role. He can be your support. He can be your controller. He can come in as a duelist. He plays a decent Raze. The reality is, just like the entirety of the Giants roster plays a decent Raze. Yeah, I think that he's a fantastic pickup, just because you'll never find yourself going like, oh shit, which one of us is going to have to, because you know that he plays a good game all around.
Yeah, I also think with this team in particular as well, I think they're probably going to be more hungry than anyone else, because a lot of these teams, although you've got Bone Cold with like right up the top and winning an event, the rest of the team want it more than anything. And when you're a IGL, that's what you want. Like, you don't want anybody who's coming in complacent, and I can guarantee that's not going to be the case here. Either way, those are the 10 teams. I feel like I don't really want to talk too much about favorites, because I think we basically said there's 5 or 6 teams that could potentially compete, although we're probably going to lean towards those Fnatic, Liquids, NAVIs, but nonetheless, we're now going to get into our split decisions. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, this is basically the part of the show where we each make a statement. The other person gets to choose whether they're going to argue for and against, and then the person who makes the statement has to argue the opposite. So obviously the aim of the game could be to try and make something outrageous but have a great counterpoint, or just sit in the middle and have a bit of a discussion. So the real question, Mitch, is do you want to go first? I know how many you've prepared today, so I've got a few.
I'll go second then. Okay. Let's see what your first is.
I've got to pick between these. I think I might... I'm going to start fairly mellow, because I feel like you could go either way with this one. Foot not making any changes was actually a good decision.
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely. I think that this roster, having had a run of success, having added in this 6th man to give the safety net, if that's how I'm going to view it, I think it's a really good move to just keep on steaming forward. And maybe it means that they think they're going to go sprinting in and, have a nice time, and they end up running headfirst into a brick wall and realize this is a whole nother ball game, but maybe not. And with the success they've had regionally, I think it's really hard. And this is going to be a really funny thing for me to say. It's really hard to win an event and then make roster changes right away going into the next one. Not a great idea typically. Usually doesn't work out for the better. So I don't think changing the winning formula here would be a good idea.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The thing I'd argue, though, is like if I'm looking at even my top 5 within EMEA, they're not in it. Like, I just can't put them in it. I think there's too many superstar teams that even maybe in the short term, this could work out for them. I think long term, the level that they will have had to improve, like, let's put it this way. They just about managed to beat the old Vitality roster, which has been scrapped and rebuilt. Now, that old Vitality roster wasn't in the VCT. So that's sort of the way I'm looking at this, is like the other team that was at their level at the time had to completely rebuild to think that they could compete. And they were bringing in Molesy, Twiston, like these players that we know are peak performance players who competed in the VCT. I am scared for Foot here because I think that although I don't necessarily mind the idea of going in with this roster and seeing how they do, there's a very real chance that once that is done, you have missed out on the biggest of opportunities, because they could have tried to break the bank and bring in a CNED or throw someone like Russ in. Okay, maybe that's still going to be an opportunity later on, but if he decides, all right, I will be the 6th man for Giants and locks himself into a contract, you're kind of strapped for either going for young talent and competing at the bottom of the league, or basically, again, just kind of hoping that this roster is at that peak performance enough to beat some of these world-class rosters. And as I said, I do find that very hard to believe.
Look, I'll give that to you. Tom, I'll swing in with one of mine then. I'm going to start this one off. I think decently easy. I hadn't actually decided whether I was going to single it to the team or the region, but you said earlier we'll steer away from favorites because we'd already kind of shown the way we'd go with that one. So I'll say this then. EMEA is going to win in Brazil.
Sure, I think we will. Like, it's going to be my biases. I definitely have one that actually sort of my own one that kind of goes away from that, and I might be giving you some fuel if you want to argue the other way in the next one. But I think that we've built some incredible teams, and I also think that we're sending some teams that haven't actually had to change a massive amount, like be it the IGL structure is still there, whereas you look at, for example, Optic. If Optic was still standing, I would have said the opposite. Like, I would have said no. Because I think that they're the team that consistently proven themselves to be one of, if not the best in the world over the last year. But that team doesn't exist anymore. I think the teams that are going through, okay, I think the likes of NRG are going to be pretty terrifying because they do have that core. I'm interested to see what comes out of Cloud9, because I think although they are definitely a super team, I don't know if they'll get off the ground running. Like, I think that a lot of what was there in the structure of Optic was to make Ye the best player in the world, and he was. But I also think that you had players like Victor who are willing to give everything to do that, and I'll be interested to see if there's that same mentality in Cloud9, and also if even Ye's just going to be able to do that to the same consistency for another year. Like, that's going to be very, very difficult. Looking over to the likes of DRX, maybe, I think that's going to be one that I think could compete in PaperX as well, are two teams that I think are definitely in the front running because they haven't made any major changes. But PaperX are having to almost make a comeback because they kind of flopped at the end of last year. DRX, though, might be the greatest argument, but I still think if you come in with a roster that has the likes of Nats and Safe and they're performing at peak performance, or you've got Durka alongside Chronicle and Leo, I just think those teams are too strong. And then, if all else fails, we've still got Big Daddy NAVI to come and fuck everyone else up.
You know, I've got a little tippy-toe around that there. Well, rather, you tippy-toed around my answer, which is beautiful. It worked out perfectly for me, because I agree. We had the conversation earlier about every Ye needs a finesse, and Ye doesn't have a finesse anymore. But finesse is a new Ye. He's got artists, which is like, okay. I mean, I guess the value shelf version, if you think about it. He's I know he won't like that, but I've said it, so unlucky. At the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, my man, you know, you look at those stats, they don't lie, and that's what Lothar used to always tell me. Yay, he's up here, artist. He ain't above him. He ain't at him. He's below him. That's how it is. That's how it is for everyone. All we can hope to be in life is a value shelf. Yay, don't kill me, artists. I'm sorry. We had a good time at Champs, okay? We snuck in that box together. But no, listen, yeah, so look, Energy can do it. Artists, being a Yay, filling those shoes, having someone like Finesse to lead them, okay, yeah, I don't see any issue there. They can compete at the top level. C9 Super Team having Yay as well, absolutely, they can do it. I'm looking towards Sentinels, though.
Yeah.
They've got the home field advantage. They've got Sassy. They've got Pancata. They've got Tens. Oh, this man could have been the whole 100 Thieves roster. He could have been anyone just spearheading it. He is nuts. And then Def and Zekin sticking together. I love Def. I think this guy is one of the best arguments for having a solid in-game leader, having a solid player, despite the statistics maybe not leaning that way. And the fact that Sentinels have seen that, in fact, they've taken him and Zekin, a nice little duo. They'll work well with Sassy and Pancata. Tens works well with everyone. The guy's unreal. I think this could be his year. This could be the best version of Sentinels that we've gotten to see so far. And with the home field advantage of having two Brazilians on that stage, they're going to be terrifying. So, yeah, look, I mean, I would love to argue that EMEA would win, but Tom, you've done that. So I obviously would then say that Sentinels would be the favorite moving into that, if it's not going to be an EMEA team, of course.
Yeah, fair. I to be honest, I thought your argument might actually be something along the lines of 100 Thieves, because I think that, like, them having their sort of core alongside Cryo, very exciting. I think that Sentinels, again, it's either going to be one of those teams that hits the ground running or it'll take some time. I think they're going to be good. I don't think that's arguable. I think it's more so whether or not they can get everybody on the same page very, very quickly. And I even think the new Loud roster is going to be an interesting one because, yeah, they've lost some pretty integral pieces, but I think they've still got a great team to sort of play behind. And, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot moving forward. Now, I'm gonna my other one. I think I might actually leave it because it's too much of a similarity to the last one. I was gonna say PaperX are favorites going into the partnership. I think we kind of sort of covered that because I think that them and DRX have real arguments because they haven't made drastic changes. DRX especially should be up there, but I'll go a different route. I'm gonna save my. I want to say it's a bit more controversial one for last. Giants are a dark horse heading into Brazil. Dark horse to win. Just to clarify.
Huh. I agree. And I'm going to arm this question nicely because you've left open a little door, and I enjoy that, Tom. You see, look, I agree that Giants are a dark horse. And if we think about the definition of that, they're a dark horse. They're not likely to win, but they're a team that are obviously in a position that could win and surprise people, right? They're the team that could sneak under and take it. So does that mean that the opposition to that would be that they are favorite, that they're going to win? You know, they're not likely to win.
No,
my argument. Therefore, they are likely to win. Is yours?
The opposition to that is that they will get fucked. That's where I would put it at least. Because I would say if you're a dark horse, like that means you're one of the teams that's not expected to win, but you probably won't. Whereas I would say if you're not a dark horse, which is the opposite, you're not going to win. Like that.
Okay, sweet.
That's the way I'd look at it.
Okay, cool. So definitively, by me arguing that they are a dark horse, you're going to argue they're dog shit.
Yeah.
More or less. Cool. I love Giants. I think these guys are in a really good position because, you know, I mean, I'm always happy to send Ryan some clips of gameplay, you know, maybe some clips of Tom speaking in about 2 minutes. Yeah. And the reality is, you know, he's going to be receptive to that. He's a good leader. He always makes you feel heard and listened to. And a team like this absolutely needs that, the fatherhood figure to lead them on into success. Maybe he can impart some wisdom about some pre-match routines, get rid of those nerves. I don't know what's going to go down behind the scenes. All I know is on the server, Giants are going to be able to take this across the line because, as I said, this is a team that they could be on HLTV. They could be playing CSGO right now, and I wouldn't be surprised. They've reached their prime now. This is their moment to succeed because they don't have any roster issues anymore, right? These guys are going to be in heaven. Look at it. There's 5 guys stuck together playing games all day long, in and out. What could possibly go wrong, Tom?
Well, firstly, I would say they have one of the least experienced IGLs. I think it's going to be really tough for them to break through a lot of the teams that we have coming into this event. I think that realistically, they're going to have to be almost a honeymoon team to be able to actually like go anywhere near that sort of grand final. Because if I'm talking about like okay, like you sort of mentioned, Sentinels, if they have a honeymoon period, I think they beat most teams. I think you're talking about Liquid, Fnatic, NAVI, like all of these other rosters that have more experience than this entire roster. Like, that's the problem I have, is like Cloud, it will be his first LAN event. You've got Rhyme, who has sort of played. Did he actually play? He was there as a sub.
He didn't play. He was a couple hours on FPX.
He was sort of, yeah, he was chilling with FPX, but again, we haven't really seen much from him. Hoodie, I think he did make it to a LAN, but it's like there's a lot of inexperience within this team. I think that there's a higher chance of them having a lot of sort of jitters going into this event, because ultimately Giants have gone in, picked up what I would call some pretty heavy hitters within the scene. If they don't have some success here, Giants might have other players ready and waiting. Like, you've got someone like Russ on the bench just chilling.
It's true.
I don't know. That could be an easy replacement.
Yeah, the Russ being on the bench is definitely something. As I said, 6-man can sometimes be a safety net. Right now, we know Russ is free to explore his options. Nothing's being found. So in my head, if I'm a player, that means there's a guy ready to replace me if I fuck up, if I'm not performing. At the end of the day, though, I think Rhyme, having played, he was trusted, first of all, to be a reliable stand-in by someone like Angel. Obviously shows his caliber as a player. And not many people are going to be able to fit into Angel's system all too easily, although we've seen it, obviously. He went over to North America, played on Gen G as well, played under, I don't know what we're calling him, a Kukos, I suppose, in NIP for so long, and I'm sure learned a ton from an IGL as experienced as him. I think this is somewhere that Rhyme is maybe a gamble. If you're putting together a team and you take him as your IGL.
As an IGL, definitely, yeah.
Compared to some of the options on the market, definitely I agree. He is not necessarily up there reliably, but I don't think that his peak is going to be that much lower. And it's just a matter of whether he can reach that in time.
That's the thing, yeah. Can he hit that peak in 3 months?
Mm-hmm.
As an IG, especially with barely any events to be played, I think that's going to be very, very difficult. So I'll be interested. I'd like to see them do well. I think I still believe in them as a dark horse, if I'm being brutally honest. But have you got another one? Are you ready to go?
I'll throw you one. One. This is the last little curveball for you. Scream's going to achieve more on KarmineCorp than he did on Liquid.
No, because that man got semifinals at Champions, so I think that's such a high bar let's put it this way: that Liquid roster had the ability to basically peak at an insane level with so many different players within the team that could pop off. They got to a semifinal, lost to ultimately the team that were the champions of the event, Ascend, and then they didn't have the most success after that, but they were still able to attend LAN events. They were still able to compete with top teams. I'm looking at this current KarmineCorp roster, and if we're basing it off the 5 players that are currently within the server, do I think that they can get towards the sort of top 4 of an event? No.
So my concern with counter-arguing Shin and Nuzera, unknown quantities to me, again, and how they're going to clash with some of the other teams and players and playstyles they're going to meet. But what I'm going to say about KarmineCorp is that Scream has achieved all that stuff in the past with Liquid in a different language. Now he can IGL in French, and that is going to bring just an entirely different level to this man's play, in the sense that he is saddled with so much less responsibility. He has to do everything once now. He doesn't have to do it and then translate it in his head and then say it out loud. It's a very difficult thing to do. And as comfortable as he is, and don't get me wrong, Scream is fluent in English, but in these high intensity, when the pressure is on, I forget my words, and remember the words and then translate them. It's a whole different ball game. So, or remember the translation of the word, I suppose, technically the more correct way. But I think that level of comfort is going to give him so much more wiggle room. Now, again, it depends on the tools that he's given, but I don't think Scream is just going to rock up and be like, oh, KarmineCorp, you guys want to keep Shin and Nuzera? But they're actually really shitty players? Yeah, sure. Why not? No, I think he's going to have played with them and, okay, yeah, I can do something with this. He believes he can work with these guys and achieve a title. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
they would. Let me say they wouldn't be here, because if it comes to Scream or those, they're not going to go, sorry, Scream, get out.
They chose them over Enzo, so they must be doing something right.
All right, okay. Well, that's you say that. I fucking hope they don't succeed. But go ahead.
Oh, right. I got one more. Heretics will finish top 8 in Brazil.
Crackhead. No, no. I think top 8 is a little bit of a push.
Top 8 in Brazil.
Again, we have to remember the sheer quantity of teams going to this event. This is not, we're not swimming in the kiddie pool here, man. We got Sentinels, 100 Thieves, C9, and NRG already. That's the top 4.
What's wrong with
all 4 of them could be top 4. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're not a Fnatic. They're not a Liquid. I mean, if we're talking about Giants as a dark horse, but you believe them to be, then we kind of 2 dark horses. That wouldn't really make sense here. So Heretics would have to then be a favorite.
Top 8 team.
A top 8 team. Yeah, well, sorry. They would already have to be in the top 3 of our region, which we've just discussed. Otherwise, what are we assuming, that nobody can hit shots outside of EMEA and NA?
I'm ready to counter this.
You're crazy. Go on. Go for it.
I was obviously, the whole point of this is I wanted you to go this way.
No, of course.
Now, Zeke online, he's not the greatest player in the world. On LAN, Champions MVP. Can't argue it. He was that's where he played his best. Remember, they do not have to qualify to Brazil. They already get to go instantly. Kellogg's. Mitch, where did he play his best Valorant? That's what I'm asking you. Was it on LAN? Because I think it was on LAN. A proven LANimal himself.
Might have been.
Mixwell,
let's see where you're going with this.
Probably everybody, other than maybe Angel, maybe FNS, probably doesn't have as much LAN experience as the father himself. That is a certi LANimal. And then you've got Avova, who, again, that G2 roster, whenever they had played their very best Valorant, it was on LAN. Now they're coming in with an IGL. They've got the same coach that they had when I think they finished top 4 on LAN, which is Neil Zenio, who, honestly, I think I was quite surprised when he was let go, because I don't think that was the smartest of moves. They've added in Weber as well, who's been working with, I think, Mouse Sports, so they've added to their thing. And this is my argument. This is why I sort of tried to bait you in a little bit here, is if in any other tournament, in maybe a couple of years, whatever, if this team is the same, I wouldn't make this argument at all. The reason I think that they actually do have an opportunity to finish in that top 8 is that there's going to be so many teams coming in with brand new rosters, won't have got to play much on LAN. Okay, most players, I think, at this point will have had some level of experience, but you go to like a Vitality, for example, there really isn't much there. So you come in with this team, you have Zeke, who's probably going to be in the best of moods after being picked back up by a different roster and put into some of these roles. He was the MVP of the champions that Ascend won. It wasn't CNED. It wasn't the man that we talk about being that superstar #1 player. It was Zeke. So that's why I genuinely do think that there's an opportunity for this Heretics roster to finish top 8 at Brazil.
Right. Well, let me propose a question then.
Okay.
Let me pose a question. You don't propose it. Anyways, PaperX. That's 1. Liquid. Fnatic. DRX. NAVI.
The thing is,
Sentinels. 100 Thieves. C9 and NRG. That's 9 teams. I've gone top 9. So let's take 2 of those out. We just need to take 2 of those out.
But this is the thing, right?
Just 2.
I don't need to, because I can guarantee at least 2 of those teams are going to flop, because it's not possible for them not to. I think there's going to be upsets galore when it comes to this event. I think there's going to be teams coming in. Like, I think the new Leviathan roster looks pretty nice. Like, I think there's going to be some exciting squads that will upset. Like, you've mentioned PaperX. Where did they finish at the last event?
I'm not interested in your shenanigans here, Tom. I think
saying.
This is well, listen, the bracket, if we recall, Leviathan were on fire. They didn't have an easy route
them
through.
As one of your 8.
And no, I didn't. There's 10. There's 10. Who are you removing, Tom? That's all I want to know.
But that's the thing, though. I'm not going to claim that I can name who the rest of the top 8 will be. I just think that there's a real good chance that this Heretics roster, with just being like pumped up on LAN again, with having the players they have that can perform to a high level, top 8 for them, it wouldn't blow my mind. I think it's possible. Whereas I think there's other teams, like, for example, like Giants being a dark horse really relies on their sort of all of their players hitting their peaks for them to do it. They have to get off the ground running. That's why they're a dark horse. Whereas for this squad, I'm kind of sat there going, okay, they've now got a better IGL than I think we've ever really seen since Cold Amenta, when it was that G2 core. That's why I'm looking at all of these players as almost a G2 roster. I think that if he can properly implement everything and give players like Kellogg's, players like Zeke what they need to perform, I don't think it's that crazy.
Sure. Yeah, look, there's a reality that they can reach that ceiling again, though, in the turnaround time and what they're up against internationally. It's going to be a big ask of them. We'll check back a couple weeks, Tom, and I'm excited to see how this one turns out. It's not that far away. I'm living in February 14th, man. It's around the corner. Round the corner. Woo.
Nonetheless,
tomorrow I think we're flying out, right? Something like that.
I'm probably going to be. I might be proven wrong, but it's a fun thing to argue either way. Of course, that we've had plenty of ludicrous statements. I'm sure many people are going to not necessarily enjoy everything we've said about the different rosters and upcoming, but I want to know ultimately who you think has done the best within this franchise scene. Like, it down in the comments, let me know who has built the perfect partnership roster, who has garnered your support. Have you jumped off the Liquid ship? Have you made your way to KarmineCorp, or are you still just sitting strong with Fnatic? Either way, that is it for this episode of Split Decision. Like and comment and subscribe, and obviously we'll see you again next time with hopefully ring that bell. Either way, we'll see you again next time. Ring a ding ding. Goodbye.